Hello, everyone. I hope and pray that you're doing well. There's a reason I'm here in the sanctuary in front of the Advent candles. On Sunday, we looked at Psalm 46, and there's one line there towards the end that's just so fitting for our Advent waiting. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Sometimes in my house, I don't know how loud the fan, the range fan is, the one above the stove. I don't know how loud it is until somebody turns it off. And then there's just this blessed silence afterwards. And think about all the idle chatter in your own life. The noise, background noise and white noise, things that distract you, numb you to the very presence of God. And then think about silence. Have you ever tried to sit in silence for a minute, or for 30 minutes, or for an hour, or for an entire day? It takes every ounce of our Calvinistic muscle to resist the urge to do something sometimes. And maybe that's no more obvious, no more apparent than during Advent. Augustine wrote, I was lost in my earthly existence and darkness. Then I heard your voice behind me, but I did not understand it because of the noise. There's this, I think, great story about President Franklin Roosevelt. And he was sick and tired of the noise, the idle chatter, the trivia, the empty talk, the smooth talk that would happen at all these White House receptions. Everyone seemed to be just listening to themselves and not listening at all to one another. So Roosevelt decided he was going to try something. As he met the guests as they were coming into the reception, he'd flash this big smile and he'd stick out his hand and he'd say to them, I murdered my grandmother this morning. And with just one single exception, people smiled back and they responded nicely and they said, you're doing a fine job, or how lovely. The exception was a foreign diplomat who, without missing a beat, responded, I'm sure she had it coming to her. And the point is, without silence, even our prayers can deteriorate into this kind of White House reception chatter. I don't know if you remember, there were those Pneuma DVDs, 15, 20 years ago, and in one, it was entitled Noise. We're reminded of the prophet Elijah. And Elijah is running away from Jezebel, right? Jezebel wants to kill Elijah, and Elijah's, kind of just about at the end. He's super stressed, and he doesn't know if he wants to kind of go on, and God says to Elijah, go up on the mountain, because I'm going to show up. And so Elijah does. He goes up on the mountain, and this wind comes on the mountain, and it shakes the mountain violently, but God isn't in the wind. And then there's this great earthquake, but God isn't in the earthquake. And then there's this massive fire that covers the mountain, but God isn't in the fire. And then comes the still, small voice of God. There's some discussion about what exactly the voice was, because some people think the actual Hebrew word here doesn't even refer to a sound that you can audibly hear, right? So some translators, like the NRSV, translate the phrase that God was in the sound of sheer silence. God wasn't in the wind. God wasn't in the earthquake. God wasn't in the fire. God was in the sheer silence. And so what if silence and solitude and contemplation, you know, these important spiritual disciplines, what if these things aren't merely kind of otherworldly, right? You know, just this navel gazing and fruitless exercises. But what if these aren't world hating exercises, but world healing exercises? What if we allow them, silence and the such, what if we allow them to reframe us as creatures to a creator who invites us to be still and know that I am God? This Advent season, will you find sanctuary in God? And in the silent waiting of Advent, whatever you're waiting for, may the peace of Christ be with you all.